What's the good word, everybody? Welcome in. It's the PHNX Cardinals podcast, your premier Arizona Cardinal podcast. Like and subscribe. Leave us a 5-star wherever you get your programming. I'm Johnny Venerable. He is Bo Brock here on an off-season Wednesday. We're going to be joined by Pro Football Focus's Sam Monson later on to talk the state of the Redbirds, Bo Brock. But somebody's already kind of making a case for why the Cardinals may not be a desirable destination for maybe a future number one pick in Caleb Williams. It's the silly season. We're not even close to 2024 yet. Here it is. It's presented to us.
Yeah, well, I mean, any article from this guy who puts on clown shoes to go to work is him throwing shade at the Cardinals organization, and it's stupid because we're talking about something that the last time it happened was nearly 20 years ago. Yeah, it's like we're not talking like half a decade ago. We're not talking 10 years ago. We're not talking 15 years ago. We're almost talking 20 years that Eli Manning and his dad, Archie Manning, decided that the San Diego Chargers were a trash organization, and they are absolutely. Dean Spano is one of the worst owners in the league, took his ball and left San Diego. Like they were right in doing so. As far as what's going on in Arizona, the only person that's upset about the direction of the organization is a guy that works for this football reporting agency. Let's just call him that. Can we try not to give him any like promotion?
Well, I feel like I have to give context to what we're talking about. So Mike Florio, who's been on the Cardinals this offseason, put out an article at 3:22 a.m. Arizona time. He's on the East Coast, basically saying like Cardinals may love Caleb Williams, but what if Caleb Williams refuses to play for the Cardinals? Turns out when you're bad and you get the number one pick, you're probably not a great team for the number one pick to go to. And I don't know, it's happened every single year since 2004, which is, my math is correct, 19 straight years of the number one pick agreeing to go to the team that had the top pick. And again, this is all hyperbole, assuming the Cardinals will have the top pick. But like, let's just do comparison's sake. Like Chargers at the time, not a good stadium. Cardinals have a brand new stadium as of 2006, 7, not an issue, right? Destination, right? You live in Paradise Valley, live in Scottsdale. I know it's not apples to oranges with San Diego, but booming economic climate, that checks a big box. I would also say that in comparison to run of success, I think the Cardinals, outside of a couple years, have had more success than the Chargers had up until that point when they took Eli Manning. Chargers have been a disaster for many, many years. Cardinals have been to a Super Bowl. They've been to the postseason. People have seen the Cardinals on national TV in the playoffs. If Joe Burrow can go to Cincinnati, right, first overall,
great point,
and revitalize that franchise. If you're Caleb Williams, like, are you going to have this hype of Andrew Luck-esque, but then back out of a challenge? The Cardinals are a challenge. It's a challenge to cover them sometimes on a daily basis on this show. But if Caleb Williams comes out and says, oh my God, I need everything to be cut and dry, perfect for me and my family, then you're not the franchise quarterback that people want, that people love, right? But if it's the same argument I think people use with like Kyler Murray, it's like the offseason coaching search. If you don't want to work with Kyler Murray, we don't want you here. Remember that whole thing? It's like, if you don't want to come fix the Cardinals, if you're Caleb Williams, then don't come here, which I think is blasphemy. I think 100%. Cardinals drafted Caleb Williams, he would come to Arizona to be their quarterback.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. He would see the work already that's been put in from Monty Williams, and we're going to learn a lot. Monty Ossenfort. R.I.P. Monty Williams in the Valley as far as that goes. But as far as Monty Ossenfort and what he's done as far as accumulating draft assets for the draft that Caleb Williams is, presumably going to be drafted number 1 overall, and it's going to be Caleb Williams and probably another top 5 to top 10 pick. And it's like, yeah, you got 2 more starters right there. Plus, your second round pick, two to potentially 3 third round picks. You're going to have just an absolute, just huge, just pile of picks that you can start to really truly kickstart this rebuild. And as far as, the days of Cliff Kingsbury and Steve Keim and even Michael Bidwell effing around and sending this organization in the wrong direction, they're actually going in a positive and trending in a positive direction. I think Caleb Williams can even see that, where I think, in that outlier where this actually went down, and, it went down again in Baltimore way back in 1983 with John Elway, and he forced his way in a trade. I mean, we're talking like it happened in 2004 and it happened in 1983. And we had like Bo Jackson in between who decided he wasn't going to play for Tampa. Like, things are bad. They're not that bad. Like, they're bad relative to the 2023 NFL landscape. There's things that you can't let continue, no doubt about it. But to say the Cardinals are such a dumpster fire that Caleb Williams would consider, with his $3 million NIL valuation, would say, maybe I'll just stay back in college and play for the Trojans for a third year. After we would have guessed that if he's number one pick, he would be back in New York at a Heisman Trophy ceremony, at least in the conversation for it, and had another successful season. What's he have to accomplish at USC? I mean, outside of maybe winning a national championship, we'll see how close they are in Lincoln Riley's second season. But to say this is once again, this is like Mike Florio is an insult comic that hasn't landed a joke in years. And like, he keeps going out. He keeps on making jokes about his ex-wife, and he hasn't hit. He just hasn't hit at all. He's grasping at this point. He doesn't even have like good content that anybody, even outsiders to what's going on with the Arizona Cardinals are like, that's a bit rich for me, Mike.
I think the Cardinals' shortcomings they're obvious, and I think they're being addressed. Paying for food at the facility, we feel like that's being nixed. They're upgrading their weight room. I would think, you would hope Michael Bidwell, if they have the number one pick, or otherwise if they don't, is revamping everything that's gone on in Tempe at their offseason workout facility. The stadium is an elite stadium and hosts Super Bowls. But here's the thing that I don't think people factor in. And we've kind of touched on this. Other programs are like Detroit, Green Bay are not destination franchises for like a lot of free agents, right? Where did JJ Watt opt to come play, albeit the latter years of his career, when he wanted to bask in the sun? He came to Arizona. He could have gone to Wisconsin, right? His college state. Could have gone to a contender, which he did at the time, but he came to Arizona. I think Caleb Williams, if the stars align, for lack of a better term, and he's the first pick, we'll be able to see the immense value of playing in the Valley. I mean, I think of Arizona, right? I didn't grow up here. A lot of you know that. I'm from the Midwest. I grew up in Illinois. Like, the sex appeal with this state and this economy and the real estate market is a real thing. Do they have a great football culture here? No, it's not very good. But to young people now, that might not matter. Just like a lot of free agents don't want to go play in rural Wisconsin for the Green Bay Packers. The only thing that gets them there, if they do go there, is the legacy and the trophies and the winning and blah, blah, blah. So, and et cetera. So I feel like the Cardinals, just by being here, are in a good position for that never to happen. And I know you could say, well, that Eli Manning's family was a different animal entirely. His dad played for a bad organization in New Orleans and said, I don't want that for my son. Peyton had his early lumps in Indianapolis, had to turn that franchise around. I don't think we would see anything of the sort like that with Arizona, because I think Caleb Williams would be able to say, oh, I've seen Kyler Murray go to the playoffs, and Carson Palmer and Kurt Warner. If anything, a young person now who's in their early 20s has seen the most success pertaining to this franchise than somebody like me. I'm 35 years old. If I was coming out of college or right in college, I would have seen this team win one playoff game with Frank Sanders in 1998. That's it. Right. They have a much better case now to a young person than they did when they were playing at Sun Devil Stadium with no playoff wins.
Right. And as far as everything that Mike Florio outlined in his article, and he continues to go at the shameful response to the claim filed by executive Terry McDonough. If you think Caleb Williams, a college player, is paying that close attention to all this, he doesn't give a shit about that. If he's sitting there and he's going to be 1-1, he's going to want to go up there and he's going to want to bro hug Roger Goodell. He's going to want to hold up the jersey and be the number one pick in the draft. That means more to him than all this stupid and stuff going on and surrounding this organization that unfortunately lingers around this organization. And, you know, things are changing for the first time. Like, and we're going to get into this, like the Arizona Cardinals getting high praise from an unlikely source as far as how they've done this offseason and how they're approaching this rebuild. They're doing it the right way for the first time, and I don't think that it's not going unnoticed. So they're going to eat a bunch of crap this season potentially, just because how the roster's undermanned, and that you're going to be playing against a San Francisco 49ers team twice. You're going to face a Baltimore Ravens team. You're going to face a Philadelphia Eagles team. You're going to face a lot of talented rosters, right? And with that is going to come probably some losing, but it's also going to be a necessary evil as far as this rebuild. And Caleb Williams, he's a competitor. Like, he's not coming into a place where he just is going to go off and his career is like San Diego. Like, you don't even know, do they have roots? Do they want to play in crappy Qualcomm? No, like, to your point, State Farm Stadium is a nice stadium, and he has a chance to do something that, if it is Caleb Williams, and I know we're getting ahead of ourselves here, he's the successor to a guy that was probably the first quarterback that was going to truly give them a chance from the homegrown sense, right? And that hasn't really organically happened yet for this organization since moving to this desert, that they drafted the guy and he led them to where the most organizations want to go. Like, when you talk about Green Bay, they had Lombardi, right? They had Bart Starr, and then they were blessed by, Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, and that helps grow history, right? And this organization really hasn't had a chance to grow history because they've fumbled it so many times as far as trying to identify who the quarterback of the future is, or how they were going to approach the quarterback position or roster building. They're approaching roster building for the first time correctly. Yeah. And if it's Kyler Murray, if it's Caleb Williams, they're going to be in a decent spot to succeed, unlike these other teams where the margin for error, it's like some of your star players get hurt, you're out.
Yeah, 100%. It's such a non-story, but at the same time, I think it was worth bringing up, Bo Brock, to talk about the absurdity of the entire thing. Kyler Murray is still this team's quarterback until further notice, and the Cardinals would have to go through a 2018-esque type of season to get the first overall pick, to earn it, right? I don't know, man. You sent me a video not too long ago of the Bucs quarterbacks recently, and I've seen people double down on how bad Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask look. I think if the Cardinals are going to be bad, they got competition to be bad. Yes. Between the Raiders right now, we don't have a quarterback, the Buccaneers. There are going to be teams, and you mentioned this on a prior show. How many teams could pull the ripcord on 2023 mid-year, or maybe within the first quarter, when they know this is not going well? And if you look at what's going on in a Washington, new ownership, Las Vegas, McDaniels hot seat, it's like these teams could be ready to pull the Desmond Ridder in Atlanta. So I think the Cardinals pick will be high. Will it be the first overall pick? That I'll echo something I said yesterday. It's going to take them, I think, starting Colt McCoy and Jeff Driscoll the entire year. I would say that will probably get the job done. But if Kyler Murray comes back and, to your point, wins them a couple games, looks competitive, then they're going to stick with Kyler Murray. Will they allow that to happen? I think is going to show their cards. They're going to be scouting Caleb Williams, though, this fall. Everybody needs to prepare for that. They're going to have scouts at USC. They have a plethora of talent. They're going to be a Final Four team, we assume. Cardinals are revamping their scouting department. They're going to have eyeballs on this young quarterback. Whether or not they have an opportunity or they want an opportunity to pull the trigger is a different story.
It's tough. It's so tough, especially when you're trying to, like, it's nearly impossible to tank in the NFL just because of how brutal the sport is. Like, you can't go out there and not play 100% and not get injured or put yourself in harm's way. Like, when we mentioned tanking, like, I thought you put it well yesterday. It's like, as far as just the roster, was the roster basically torpedoed to where competing, like truly competing and contending week in and week out is almost nearly impossible with where they are right now. Like, they would have to have an unbelievable amount of players have production that nobody anticipated, right? I mean, when you just look at this roster, just pound for pound, like position, like how many guys do they have that are starting caliber players, right? And it's tough. I would say they have the least amount of those guys in the league. Now, are we hopeful? Are we optimistic that they found some diamonds in the rough, that they hit on some draft picks, and then they've got some guys that they can move forward with? Sure. But to compete in this league, it is so hard. I mean, we've seen it when they had a talented roster, when they were coming off a playoff appearance, and they lose just a guy here, a guy there, and you're trying to put them with maybe like not a replacement level type player. it's tough to compete in this league. Now, that being said, like, as tough it is to contend, it's also tough to bottom out. Like we saw, Houston was so bad. They had quarterback play from David Mills and Jeff Driscoll, who's on this roster, and the other ham sandwiches that were there, and they still screwed it up. They still won a game in the finale, and they were out of the number 1 pick. Like, that's how small the margin for error is when you're competing in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes. So, like, at some point, like, we're having these conversations, we get in depth and stuff, and we're even talking about how dumb a Mike Florio is for even thinking about a scenario where Caleb Williams would say thanks, but no thanks to the Arizona Cardinals picking number 1. But just to be in that spot 1-1, it's damn near impossible. The odds are equally as, like, we have the odds of the Arizona Cardinals with 2 premium top picks as it stands right now. Theirs and the Texans, and it's still not a slam dunk that they have the top pick.
Well, and to your point, like, their position groups range from solid to horrific. Their defensive line is the worst in the NFL. But I would contend, though, when you're bad and you can't stop people from running the football with your D-line, and then in turn your quarterback play is atrocious by default, it's really hard to contend and be competitive. I didn't watch too much of AFC South football last year and do a deep dive on what went on in Houston, but the Cardinals play in a better division than the Houston Texans did. The Houston Texans, I think, got 1 or both of their wins against the Colts and tied with Tennessee, something to that effect. So everything they got within their own division. I mean, outside the LA Rams, which we don't know the status of what's going down there, like, Cardinals are going to have a tough go. Their schedule's not easy. We're not rooting for them to lose games here in May, but I would say believe what they do, not what they say. They told you this offseason they don't want to invest in this season. And if that's the reality of the situation, then that situation could lead to the first overall pick. But if it's a necessary evil, I thought Jody Ayler put it well on his show earlier today on Fox Sports, basically saying, you know what, if it sets you up for the next 15 years, it's the right move. It's 100% the right move. Now, I want to transition, though, Bo, if we could, to the state of this team now that DeAndre Hopkins is no longer there. The Cardinals, if you missed this, you've been living under a rock. They told D-Hop to go away, and they paid him $20 million to go away. And now Hop has a free agency tour that I guess includes some emojis.
Yeah, it does. And you know what? I saw this today, and I felt relief. Didn't you? When you see DeAndre Hopkins, and I got it on the Bleacher Report. I was tipped off by Bleacher Report. I got a notification that said DeAndre Hopkins cryptic tweet. I don't know what's so cryptic about this, but at the same time, after going through like the Chandler Jones saga and Patrick Peterson and having Honey Badger on the roster and seeing some of their stuff that comes up on my Twitter timeline, it's 3 monkey emojis, right? Yeah. And one's kind of got his hands on his head. One's got his hands covering his eyes. And it's being viewed as cryptic, but I'm also in the mindset, like, thank God he's not on the Arizona Cardinals roster any longer. It's no longer like set towards this organization any longer.
Yeah. I mean, it makes me a little sad because here's what I'm rooting for. I'm rooting for him to go for the money only. I want him to go to Cleveland. I want him to go somewhere not what I think is a contender, just as a money grab. Because then we're all just like, yeah, he's getting paid, good for D-Hop, but it's not going to affect my Sundays. Like, we both know Buffalo's going to the playoffs and Kansas City's going to playoffs. Like, that's going to be tough to watch next January if D-Hop's in the AFC title game or the NFC title game or whatever. Yeah. I am hoping that Cleveland is the destination because they just write him a big fat check. Maybe it's Carolina with all their cap space. I want him to go desperately to a non-contender for the most money. And everything that I've read from Albert Breer and company, it's like he wants to get paid. And Buffalo and Kansas City don't have any money. So it's like, wouldn't it be ironic? We spent all that time discussing his trade market. Even as a free agent, he couldn't get, the package from the teams that he wants to go play for. And instead, just gets the biggest check. I mean, at that point, it's just like, D-Hop, do you even care about winning anymore? Probably not.
It's interesting because I felt like he was a player that was consumed by his legacy, right? Because we saw the clips from Hard Knocks and asking then Cardinals 100%. Wide receivers coach Sean Jefferson, is he a Hall of Fame player? And they had to kind of like reinforce some of that. And like, of course, that's what you are. And but then you look at it, it's like some of the stuff that's missing on his resume is playing deep into the playoffs and playing on some of the biggest stages in the NFL. I mean, the numbers there, I mean, some of his numbers are the best numbers by any wide receiver at the age of 30. I mean, and that's a fact. But at the same token, like a lot of Hall of Fame wide receivers did a lot of work post turning 30, including, Larry Fitzgerald, who left the field at one point leading a Super Bowl with a go-ahead touchdown. And I don't think Hop has, a signature moment outside of the regular season that he can put on to boost a Hall of Fame resume, even though he's on that trajectory. But we've got a resident young guy with us on the show today, and Sean DePaz. Can you kind of decipher this, what's being deemed a cryptic tweet from DeAndre Hopkins?
Nah, because trust me, I was trying.
Okay.
But no, I'm not. I was told yesterday that I'm out of touch with the youths.
Okay.
But
wow, I find that hard to believe.
Yeah, I do too.
Well, I didn't know that Bad Bunny was dating Kendall Jenner and was beefing with Devin Booker. So apparently,
that's a good thing, though.
That's what I thought too. But no, I have no idea what the emojis mean.
You just blew Johnny. Johnny didn't know any of that information either. He just found
it
that
hurts.
Right
well,
now.
I try to be cool, like by association with a lot of the young peeps at PHNX. So if Sean's not in the know, what am I, in the attic? Am I in the basement locked away? That's tough reality for me. But
I'm the Clint Eastwood gif of him just scowling at it, presumably just old young people at the other end of his lawn. Anybody in the chat? Let's see if the chat is anybody guessing what DeAndre Hopkins emoji tweet was about.
I would.
I don't see anybody trying to figure that one out. But it seems like he's saying, "Hey, this is kind of embarrassing, right?"
You've made it embarrassing, DeAndre. This is like you've gone on every podcast, every show. Hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. Is that what it is? Something to that effect. That sounds about right.
Yeah, we do. We absolutely.
Well,
do
I mean, my thing. I just read it as monkey see or monkey do type thing, but I guess these monkeys are doing the exact opposite of all those things. So
I'm not a monkey, DeAndre. I am a real boy, and I just want to see my team do well. And I wish you were still playing for this because you know what? I'm going to be honest with you, Bo. After the draft, and they said we're going to roll with D-Hop. Like, I'm like, all right, man, I can sit back on Sundays and watch number 10 play football from my franchise, for my fave team. And then it's like, he posted that video. We posted it on PHNXCardinals Twitter. It's like, I never wanted to leave. It's like, okay, well, they have their capital from the Paris Johnson Jr. trade down. Let's do it. Let's have a good time. And then what happened in May? It just went on every show possible, basically saying, like, I would rather play with all these other quarterbacks. And then the Cardinals cut him. And I think that's the hardest thing. And I get it. Some people are like, well, you wouldn't have taken a fifth earlier this offseason. And you're right. It's really not about the return for me. It's more about what the Cardinals are saying by doing it. The Cardinals are telling us that they would rather eat this money this year to not have D-Hop a part of their team. And I'm like, Cardinals, I agree with a lot of what you're doing, but you couldn't give the fan base some hope for this year to just see number 10 on the field. Like, you couldn't cut that check. What's the big deal? Like, you can take reps away from Rondell Moore. Oh, boo-hoo. I would rather see number 10 D-Hop play for a team, even if it's not a good team. I would want to, you could go out to see stars at State Farm Stadium. I don't want to see opposing fans come into the stadium for another calendar year. And people would go out to see D-Hop. It's not a huge deal in the grand scheme of things, but just what it represents just doesn't make you feel good.
No, it doesn't. And you feel like it feels refreshing to be on the other side of a disgruntled athlete, even though it took, ripping the Band-Aid off on Friday, releasing him. But man, does it set this team up. And I don't want to like that to be the lemonade that we make out of this, the 2024 offseason, but it's exciting. Like, I was looking at some of the potential free agents in the 2024 offseason at some top positions. You look at some corners, some edge rushers that could be making their way with all that extra cap space.
Well, I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid, but just real talk. If you watch this programming regularly, first of all, thank you. This was the worst free agent class of like the last 10 years.
Terrible.
What we saw in March. And then this draft class, we were told by most people at the Combine on Radio Row, it's a middle of the packed draft with probably like 12 to 15 first-round picks and true first-round picks. So if there was ever an offseason where you just put your feet up, if you're Ossenfort and company, and said, we're going to accumulate for next year, this was the year to do it. I have no problem with that. But what hurts me is DHop's already on your team. You own his rights. He had his money. You figure it out. But I don't know. Do you think if DeAndre Hopkins was still on the team, he would have showed up to mandatory OTAs next week?
No.
You think he would have held out?
Yeah. I think that they were just trying to avoid any bigger mess. And look, the key is tomorrow, right? June 1st, because the most important thing was they were clearing space for 2024. I mean, they are willing to eat $22.6 million in dead money for him to go away. And of course, lose the ability to have a true number one on the field. And Sam Monson believes he's a top receiver. He's got him 12th on his wide receiver ranks for PFF, and we're going to talk to him about that shortly. But I mean, it's bigger than that. I mean, as far as what Monti Ossenfort is trying to accomplish in setting this team up to really get after it in 2024 following this season, it was just more important to kind of eat this and absorb, Hopkins' salary this year. We got a Jalen Blair with the super chat. Hop is not a rebuild player right now. He's kind of a selfish player. He is talented wide receiver AZ. He is talented wide receiver AZ deserves, but not the elite leader Arizona needs right now. And I don't disagree with that. And I think that Hop's going to go to his next team, and he's going to, just like he did here, he's going to endure himself to the next fan base and his teammates, and he's going to go out there and he's going to perform. But as far as, the right guy right now for the Arizona Cardinals, I just don't think he's that.
I know who they need. I know who they need right now, and it's a third-round pick out of Stanford who is making catches. Sean, cue the video. This per the Team Beat account. Michael Wilson, who many of us didn't know about 2 months ago.
Goodness.
Look at that. Is that not Michael Thomas 2.0? Give this guy a starting job. Just start all the rookies. Bro.
Look at that dime. Who's throwing that ball? Do we know?
No, we don't.
Who threw it out over, was that Nate Harrison's outreached arm? What an app. Just
elite,
dropping it in a bucket. And great route running there, my Mike Wilson. That's great. That's awesome. That gets me fired up. You know what else gets me fired up is a nice evening out at Four Peaks. I love Four Peaks. Love to get out there. It's my local watering hole. Like to go out there, have a kilt lifter, maybe a bourbon barreled aged kilt as well. It's so smooth. It's a nice, like, almost dessert drinking beer. Can't have too many of them, but you can certainly have all the unbelievable array of beers that they brew right there on their 8th Street location. And also Four Peaks is doing a great thing. They're giving you a chance to win 4 tickets to a Diamondbacks game. The D-backs are hotter than the sun right now. You can get 4 tickets to a Diamondbacks game. Just follow Four Peaks at Four Peaks Brew and at Four Peaks Pub on your socials. Get the latest from Arizona's premier craft brewery. Get Four Peaks 4 seats. One lucky winner gets 4 seats to an upcoming Diamondbacks game plus D-Bucks. So you can go buy some food. Go buy that delicious Wow Wheat, #1 wheat beer in Arizona. You can also get that Hop Knot, whatever you can get there at Chase Field. They've got the Four Peaks tap room up there in right field. Check them out at Four Peaks Brew, at Four Peaks Pub. Keep up with the latest in Arizona's hometown brewery. Got to be 21 years or older. And of course, when you drink Four Peaks, do it responsibly.
I'm so fired up. One side, Michael Wilson. The other side, Marvin Harrison Jr. We'll have since upgraded. And if you're looking to upgrade, by the way, anytime you see like big neon signs at bars or restaurants, I'm always like, how can I get one of those? Where can I buy those? I like big shiny things. Well, Saturday Neon has just announced that they're going to be doing a promo code offer with PHNX, 10% off your order. I'm super fired up about this. I'm going to get one for my office, maybe my living room. We'll see. This is not the Michael Scott beer sign. These are Saturday.
Polly Girl?
No, this is Saturday Neon. Give them a Google if you haven't. Check out SaturdayNeon.com. This company was started by 2 friends, college roommates. They make LED neon signs. They're fantastic. Whether you're a diehard fan, casual supporter, you'll love how this sets up your setup in Arizona colors. Saturday Neon signs are made high-quality materials. They're backed by a 2-year warranty, officially licensed 19 schools, including Arizona, Colorado, Alabama, Wisconsin, Auburn, many others. So if you're a U of A fan, they've got you covered. again, offices, man caves, dorm rooms, graduation gifts, basements, bar areas. I was looking at their site compared to others, super affordable. We're going to help you save money. Go to SaturdayNeon.com. Use that code PHNX, 10% off your order, free shipping for anything over $200. Really sharp. I can't wait to get mine in the mail, Bo.
Yeah, I can't wait either. So yesterday, we just didn't get to it because we were so loaded. We had the DHop news kind of picking up the pieces there. An update from Budda Baker, who talked to Cam Cox, 12 News, said he'll report to mandatory minicamp. But also we had the second half, the final half of Bill Barnwell's piece ranking all 32 teams off seasons. And we saw that the Arizona Cardinals weren't in the bottom half. They weren't in the bottom 16. We knew that they were going to be in the top 16. We just didn't know how high. And if you've kind of followed Bill Barnwell the last couple of years, if you're a Cardinals fan, he's been a tough read, right? I mean, Bill Barnwell kind of made a career crushing Steve Keim-led Arizona Cardinal offseason.
He
right?
did.
I mean, it was a little cottage industry for
a lot
Barnwell.
of people did.
And he like Keim was regular material. It was like if you're watching a late night television, and you had like kind of a wacky president, like that was their number one source material. Keim with Barnwell's. Well, not the case in the first offseason on Monti Ossenfort. Arizona Cardinals were 12th as far as 12th best offseason in the NFL, according to NFL analyst expert Bill Barnwell. And if you kind of subtract like his top spot, Johnny, he gave to the Washington Commanders, and it was kind of a joke because it's like subtraction of Daniel Snyder whenever that inevitably happens. That's why he's giving them the number one spot. So he really got the Cardinals at 11th. So right outside, almost cracked the top 10.
And I love his rationale too. He put it in great detail as to why the Cardinals were where they were. And it was because of the heist of the Houston Texans, the team we just talked about. We're going to say this so much, it's going to make people sick in the ears, but it bears repeating. Next year's draft, the 2024 class, is a generational class. It's Jamar Chase, it's Penei Sewell-esque, Joe Burrow. It's that kind of draft class. And the Cardinals took the first round pick from a team that's been one of the worst run organizations of the last half decade since Deshaun Watson left town. And they haven't kicked their rebuild into high gear. And they are presumed to be one of the worst teams in the NFL with Arizona in 2023. The Cardinals took their first round pick and their third. So you project that. Two players that the Cardinals are going to get potentially in the top 10 or top 5 or top 3 that could change their stars seemingly overnight. And also, when you have an operation now that puts an emphasis on draft and developing the right kind of players at the right kind of positions. I mean, I would argue the Cardinals should be in the top half, Bo, without that trade for moving off of Steve Keim. You move off of Steve Keim and revamp your draft and develop, and getting serious about drafting and developing with an external GM, really for the first time in modern Cardinal history. We know once upon a time they had a GM head coach combo that was an external hiring. He should not be named in the early 90s, Buddy Ryan. But that doesn't really count. This is the first true, and it's similar to Washington. It's like baby steps for franchises that need to take big boy steps. The Cardinals went outside the organization and hired a professional scouting, developing general manager. They could have taken the easy way out. They could have said, Adrian Wilson, you're promoted. Fans like you. They know you. You're buddies with Steve. We'll just keep status quo. We were having those conversations December and January on this program. The fact that they moved on from Keim, Ossenfort comes in. He steals Dave Sears, one of the best draft and developing minds out of Detroit. And they get a guy in Jonathan Gannon who gave up 14 points total in the NFC playoffs. It's like, that's a top 16 selection. And then the heist of Houston, I would argue Cardinals should be in the top 10. Because I love our friends at CHGO in Chicago, and they had a really nice draft trade down. But I can't give teams credit for overspending on this underwhelming free agency core. And it was our argument. All of March is like, well, who are they going to spend money on?
Right.
And anything that they would have done would have been almost in detriment of what they're trying to do now, which is position themselves to get a high pick in 2024.
The Arizona Cardinals for far too long, especially under Steve Keim, was that friend that would always go find the wrong romantic partner, right?
Sure.
And then they would finally break up, and this person was like, yeah, I'm going to work on myself. And the next thing you know, they got another person right there going through that same vicious cycle right now. The Arizona Cardinals are finally doing the right thing where they just are going to work on themselves, right? They're not just going to go find the next person and just kind of fill that void with just time and showering somebody with gifts and good times and stuff. It's actually, they're going to work on themselves here. And I think embracing this rebuild and doing it the right way for the first time really ever, at least since this franchise moved here, that's being applauded. It's universally applauded by people who cover this league, because if you do it right, you can set yourself up. Even with a team with San Francisco who approached it the right way initially under John Lynch, were able to overcome missteps like trading up and going for the 3rd overall pick and Trey Lance and missing, right? Because their ability to draft and develop, they had done it so well for so long that they were able to overcome even massive miscues. And the Arizona Cardinals had zero margin to overcome anything under the previous regime. Like we talked about it with Kyle, and Kyle put it in his article yesterday on compare.bet. Like Steve Keim unrealistically believed that this team would never rebuild. Like he was going to go for it each and every year. And that's the most absurd thing I've ever heard in my entire life.
Yeah, and if you look at Barnwell's article, the only knock is, of course, what we've been talking about, the fact that you couldn't get anything in return for DeAndre Hopkins. But again, I mean, Ossenfort was able to take advantage of a desperate Houston team in a trade down for a pass rusher, not a non-quarterback. You don't think Ossenfort tried to trade DeAndre Hopkins? Of course he did. Maybe, to me, it's like if they had traded him for a 5th, we would have killed him in February. So the fact that they didn't trade him for a 5th in a down draft in May, that's okay. There was, after the Paris Johnson trade down, there was nothing that outside of a top 50 pick that was going to be, make it worth it for DeAndre Hopkins. It was always going to be a little bit of a, okay, that's unfortunate, right? And it's especially not going to make or break their team moving forward. What's more important to them, clearly, much more than a draft pick, much more than selling number 10 jerseys, is to remove that $22 million and to have that flexibility next year. So, I mean, to knock the Cardinals for the D-Hop situation, that's a hand that and he puts it in the article.
Yeah.
Barnwell does. He said Ossenfort was in the toughest spot of any GM in the NFL. And I think he aced it. I honestly, objectively saying he aced the offseason.
Here's how he did it. He did the exact opposite as his predecessor. He really did. Like if Steve Keim held on to his job, if he didn't unceremoniously resign like he did at the end of December, that he would have gone out there. He would have backed up the Brinks truck to Zach Allen. He would have puffed his chest out and be like, I drafted Zach Allen in the 3rd round on a BC. We're going to give him the bag. We're going to give Byron Murphy the bag as well. And then you know what we're going to do? We're going to go out there and we're going to spend some money to get the bridge to Kyler Murray. They probably would have gone and spent all the rest of their cap resources on a quarterback to get them to Kyler Murray. And that would have been what they did this offseason. And they would have failed in the draft, probably would have taken the same draft picks that the Detroit Lions did this year. They probably would have either gone running back or off-ball linebacker. And they would have been in a tough spot and probably staring down another, middling season. Mr. J, I'm sorry you feel attacked. That was not me talking about you, my friend. Even though if you're feeling down and you go into the arms of another and you feel like that's the right move, go ahead and do it. But also, I want you to work on yourself.
Yeah, work on yourself. Also, if you're feeling down, how about some OGs, by the way?
Yeah.
OGs, they're creating experiences, and they're part of the PHNX family. If you haven't realized that by now, some of our favorite partners with some of our favorite products. I'm somebody who has been an OGs user since day one. They've got the Aquaberry Sleep Edition. Fantastic ratio to flavor your dream. CBN, THC 2-to-1. And that CBN, that compound, specifically helps with rest and relaxation. Something, I'm antsy. I'm antsy about the Cardinals, among other things. I need to chill out, relax, put some Marvin Harrison Jr. highlights on, take an OGs. Best possible way to spend the evening right now. They've got the new strawberries and cream. It's been rebranded as that Happy Balance. I'm always looking for that. I'm always looking for OGs here in Maricopa. When I can't find them, I check out OGs online at ogbrands.com and on Instagram at OG Brands. You can also find their products at your local dispensary. But remember, friends, you got to be 21 and older to purchase that sweet, sweet goodness of OGs.
Today is the last day that you can take advantage of the Memorial Day sale over at shadyrays.com. Get in now. Get 35% off the entire website. Yeah, go there, get those premium polarized shades. Protect your eyes this summer, of course, in the Valley of the Sun. Of course, what you got on your face, what you got covering your eyes and protecting them is the most important. Go take advantage of this great deal over at Shady Rays. Of course, premium polarized shades at not a premium price. I've got some bigger brand glasses, I guess you could call it, and they're just collecting dust right now in my truck. I'm carrying around. I'm wearing these Shady Rays. I love these. These are unbelievable. I know Johnny's got the same pair.
Yeah.
We are glasses bros to the bitter end. That's why I'm taking advantage. I'm going and using my 35% off, getting another pair so Johnny and I don't look foolish when we're hanging out at the next pool party out there in Maricopa with them. But do what everybody else has done. Check out for yourself. The shades rated 5 stars by over 250,000 people on the internet. Take advantage of their Memorial Day sale. If you miss out on that, you can still get in on 50% off 2 or more pairs of sunglasses by using the code PHNX. Get in on shadyrays.com.
I want to tell you about BetMGM, and we're going to hear from Sam Monson of Pro Football Focus. But first, how about a close look at the Arizona Cardinals' new helmet? This is from the Arizona Cardinals Twitter account today. So I was a little bit incorrect over the offseason when I said the bird's not really different for the Cardinals.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, but get a look at that helmet. A little bit of gloss on that helmet. You absolutely love to see that. I think this looks really sharp, Bo.
It does. When you see it out there on the practice field, it does pop because they didn't change their practice uniforms, but when they put on that new helmet, it looks great. You can kind of see the speckles that they have, kind of not so much in this picture, but when they're out there running routes.
Oh, I can see it right there.
Yeah,
on this, I can see the speckles.
And then Sean, you're more like that. The red, it's kind of a gradient red, right?
Yeah. So there's the black on the tips kind of fades into the red as opposed to it being like.
And I think it's bigger.
Cutoff.
Is the bird bigger?
I don't know, but the bird is more like metallic, kind of chromed out, which I think it looks really good. Like I was hesitant with any changes to the bird in terms of coloring and texture. Like this looks good, and the sparkle is subtle enough where I think it works. I saw this today and I stopped in my tracks because I don't know. I was probably so infatuated at the uniform unveiling that we had a couple months ago with the uniform. Like I didn't pay attention that much to the helmet. And I can't even remember if they had a helmet really on display like this. I think they did. But, man, that is an improvement, like a significant one. And you put that, guys, I know the team could be rough this year. That white on white week 1 against the Commanders with this helmet, it's chef's kiss. Yeah. The only thing better than that is a free white glove delivery for More Furniture. Ball.
Yeah, it's tough to beat that here in the Valley. You get in on More Furniture's Memorial Day sale. Go to morefurniture.com. Yeah, it's what you want for your home. Whether you're staying in an apartment, you're renting, you've got a condo, or you've got your house that you're trying to furnish and you're trying to get that nice little feng shui going on in your living room, your dining room, your kids' room, your room, your entertainment center. You got everything you need there at morefurniture.com. And as Johnny said, that white glove delivery, you buy the furniture, they'll deliver it for you. They'll get rid of the packaging materials. They'll set it up for you, and they'll put it exactly where you want it. Take advantage of it as the temperatures go over 100 degrees here in the Valley. You don't have to lift a finger. They're just going to deliver it while you sit there and you sip Four Peaks beer in your air conditioning, and they set up your More Furniture. Go save big on the best furniture in the Valley when you head to morefurniture.com.
I wonder what Sam Monson of PFF thinks the over-under for the win total should be for the Arizona Cardinals. Well, if you want to know for yourself, check out our friends at BetMGM, the BetMGM Sportsbook. Listen, we're going to be out the Great Lawn at State Farm Stadium. BetMGM Sportsbook every single Sunday, football Sunday this fall, including away games. Week 1, we're going to be there when the Cardinals take on the Commanders in Washington. Come hang out with us. But in the meantime, on Friday, come hang out with us. First Friday of every month, Knockout Nights, Cornhole League, May through August, specials, giveaways, BetMGM prizes, live shows, broadcast on site. Bo and I are going to be there hanging out. Come. They have the best nachos in the Valley that I've tried thus far. So come try them with me. We had our son's watch parties for the postseason. Pour one out for those. Those were fantastic, presented by our friends from Neutral. But we persevere on to Cardinals season. And if you haven't signed up yet, by the way, with our friends at BetMGM yet, use that bonus code PHNX. There's a few different offers depending on where you live. But for our friends in Arizona, you're going to get up to $100 in bonus bets on your first wager with BetMGM. Again, make sure you're using that sweet, sweet bonus code of PHNX. And check out the show notes for full details. In the meantime, listen to my guy Shane Diefenbach talk about it in the disclaimer.
Disclaimer, 21 plus to wager. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. U.S. promotional offers not available in Washington, D.C., Mississippi, Nevada, New York, and Ontario. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Colorado, D.C., Illinois, Indiana, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369, New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP, Arizona. 1-800-522-4700, Kansas, Nevada. 1-800-327-5050, Massachusetts. 1-800-BETS-OFF, Iowa. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help, Michigan.
For the Arizona Cardinals, offseason continues. We talked about ESPN giving them the 12th best offseason of the NFL. Not too bad for Monti Ossenfort in year one, but one strike we did have against them was pretty much just cutting bait on wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins. A lot went into that, but before the release happened, Sam Monson released his top 32 wide receivers in the NFL. And PFF Sam joins us here on PHNX Cardinals. We're excited to always talk to Sam, get his insight on this game. And Sam, when we look at DeAndre Hopkins, 12th best wide receiver in the league, you can look at everything that was maybe the red flags that led to his release. You know, as far as clearing cap space for next offseason, his age, his price tag this season, you know, maybe his lack of availability. What else? Did anything else lead to him just being outright released, in your opinion?
No, I mean, I think whenever you're looking at these kinds of roster moves, these kinds of personnel decisions, you're looking at the player and then you're also looking at the contract. And that's obviously the biggest motivating factor, and has been with DeAndre Hopkins basically since he got traded to Arizona in the first place. You know, he signs that outlandish contract that was seen as a real sort of outlier in the wide receiver market, almost stalled the entire market in the NFL for a couple of years because teams didn't want to match that kind of precedent. Eventually it kind of settled down and it became more of a normalized deal. But given his age, given his injuries, that's still the thing that's kind of driving this whole market. And your conclusion that they had to outright release him essentially has to be that nobody else wanted to trade anything of substance to pick up that kind of deal. So I don't think it necessarily means that DeAndre Hopkins is finished or he can't compete at a high level anymore. But it just means that, you know, for a while now, that contract has been a really kind of the defining part of his time in the NFL, and it had to just end. So the Cardinals were forced to get rid of him, to cut him, rather than get anybody to pick that deal up.
Yeah, I think, Sam, that's the toughest part for Cardinal fans to understand. We've been teasing it on our show for the better part of 4 or 5 months. Cardinals wanted to move off of him, but it was just kind of predetermined. We had Jordan Schultz, among others, on the show saying they want a 1, maybe they'll get a 2, and then it became, okay, a 3, and maybe a day 3 pick, and then the draft came and went, and Monti Ossenfort's like, yeah, I don't foresee a trade happening. So everybody's like, okay, he's on the team. So I guess the hard part is, what kind of message does it send to this fan base about 2023 and beyond when you're telling a player the caliber of DeAndre Hopkins, we're going to pay you $20 million to go away? And it's not like the Cardinals were stuck and strapped for cash. They had cap space to begin with. So I think we're all just kind of numb to, okay, yeah, they have more money to spend, but they're not going to spend it. How do you foresee this having a trickle-down effect for what could be a very tumultuous 2023?
Yeah, I mean, I think it says that 2023 is going to be a rough season in Arizona, and I don't think there's really any way around that. But I think what it's saying is that we are getting the house in order so that 2024 and beyond, you know, things can go in the right direction. And we saw that a year ago with Chicago. When Ryan Poles comes in, the first thing he does is basically strip that roster down to bare metal to build it back up and, you know, set things right, get going on the right foundation, and then move in the correct direction. So by the time he had finished in Chicago, they were, I think, number 1 in the NFL in cap space by a mile. They'd created all this extra draft capital, and they were ready to go. Now, the byproduct of that was Justin Fields last season had basically no help around him, no receivers, a bad offensive line. The defense wasn't good. It was a rough situation in Chicago, and that's why they were the #1 overall pick until they traded it away. I think that's the kind of season realistically that we're looking at for Arizona. It's going to be a tough season, but they've already positioned themselves fantastically for next year in terms of getting Houston's first-round draft pick in the trade that they made in the previous draft. And these are the types of moves, I think, that go on top of that in terms of getting the cap in order, getting yourself in the best possible situation so that in 2024, if all of a sudden you go and find yourself a new direction to go in, or a new quarterback to build around, or whatever that ends up looking like, you can deploy all these resources at once to put this thing back together quickly.
We'll get back into discussion as far as the Cardinals go, but continuing with your piece as far as your top 32 wide receiver rankings, and DHop at 12. And you said it's one of the more difficult players to just slot on the list because of the age, because of the lack of ability, the PED suspension, the knee. I mean, when you look at DHop now and the potential he brings to some of these top offenses of the league, the rich is going to get richer, we would assume. Where do you see DeAndre Hopkins in his best fit? I'm not going to just pin you down to one team, maybe name a trio of teams potentially.
Yeah, I mean, he goes from, nobody really wanted a part of that contract to, as soon as he's a free agent, half the league should be picking up the phone and trying to bring him in. And there's a lot of teams where it makes a ton of sense, all the way from, Carolina, who just got their new quarterback of the future in Bryce Young, but the receiving core had to take a hit in order to make it happen, trading away DJ Moore. DeAndre Hopkins would be a perfect kind of bridge receiver for that group to help Bryce Young initially, make sure that he's got somebody to throw to, but probably isn't, part of the long-term plan when Young has reached his kind of career peak and they can then move on. But he's also a perfect player for this crazy arms race that's happening in the NFL, particularly in the AFC, amongst contenders, where they're just trying to one up each other, with per each move. The Chiefs, the Bills, the Bengals, like all these Bengals, probably not so much with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase already there, but anybody that doesn't have an amazing wide receiver core already and thinks they can contend should be seeing if they can make this kind of move happen, because in this gauntlet of playoff contenders, a guy like DeAndre Hopkins can be the difference between losing in the divisional round, losing in the championship game, and making that extra game and that difference between winning a championship and not.
So the Cardinals lose DHop for nothing. They've got some pieces left at the receiving core, led by Hollywood Brown. They drafted Michael Wilson out of, I believe, Stanford in the latter part of day 2. Rondale Moore is there. Greg Dortch is there. Is this a scenario in which we could see others step up, or is this we're just treading water until who from Ohio State comes in the top 5 next year to the Arizona Cardinals? What do you make of this receiving core in 2023?
Yeah, it's an interesting receiving core because 3 of those guys we talked about are on the smaller side, speedy receivers, almost gimmick types of receivers. Hollywood Brown, Greg Dortch, Rondale Moore as well. And then Michael Wilson is the other end of the spectrum. He's a bigger bodied wide receiver, a guy that can play outside. I loved him as a prospect. I think he's a steal where they ended up getting him. Like, the biggest concern about him is injury history. And if he can actually stay healthy, I think he has the chance to be a really good NFL player and probably a better professional than he was in college. So I think there are pieces there for this wide receiver core to be good. The question is going to be, whether the offense as a whole is capable of showing that this year, or whether, Kyler Murray being injured and the situation they're going to be dealing with for the majority, if not all of the year, means that this group is going to be struggling whatever happens.
Well, you have the list here, 32 wide receivers on. Was Hollywood maybe knocking on the door of that list, or did he? Where do you kind of slot him, the Cardinals' new wide receiver 1, as far as the top wide receivers in the league list? I encourage people to check it out, pff.com. It ends with Olave from New Orleans, Christian Kirk, former Arizona Cardinals, who's on the Jaguars, and Michael Pittman Jr. Is Hollywood Brown. I got to assume he's close to that group of guys.
No, I think he absolutely is. We've seen some high-end play from him in the past. I think we're a little bit low on, real evidence of him being that true number one guy and a real difference maker in an offense where he has to be the alpha receiver in that list. But yeah, I think he's in that next group of guys that just missed the list. Players like him, Drake London from the Falcons just missed the list. Jacoby Myers from the Raiders now, I think, was in that ballpark as well. Yeah, he would be in the next group of probably 5 players that would go on.
So I want to pivot, if I can, Sam, from the wide receiver group to the quarterback group in Arizona. It doesn't give us much confidence that Colt McCoy is the presumed starter come week 1. Also has Jeff Driscoll, if you fancy, Clayton Tune in the 5th round, and then Kyler Murray's kind of TBD. We don't know when he's coming back, whether it's October, November, December. But what we do know is the Cardinals now have what a lot of people are going to assume is 2 very high picks in a blue chip ridden draft in 2024. What do you make of the potential quarterback quandary that the Cardinals find themselves in? And is there a benefit, do you believe, in sitting Kyler Murray for the duration of 2023?
Yeah, and I think it might actually benefit both sides. Kyler Murray, arguably the worst thing he can do is kind of rush himself back and not be good right away coming off a knee injury.
Bad team.
Right. And now nobody knows what they're doing, because Murray didn't look good. So you've got question marks there. The Cardinals have the quarterback rush back and didn't play well. So now they don't know what they have in Kyler Murray. It might be the best thing for all considered if he sits out the entire year and they can kind of assess what he can be without the bias of, potentially less than 100% Kyler Murray playing poorly in a bad situation, sort of discoloring the entire conversation in the offseason. But I think they're probably going to be staring down the barrel of the same kind of conversation they had when they drafted Kyler Murray in the first place, right? Which is a year after they took Josh Rosen in the first round. And it's essentially weighing up how much better, if at all, do we think the options are than keeping around with Kyler Murray. It's a different conversation because, Murray's been given the big contract, but by an old regime, and they basically need to evaluate just how good they believe he is or can be going forward. But it's going to center around that part of it. And then the other side of the equation, just how good are these rookies next year? Caleb Williams from USC, Drake May from NC. These are the 2 guys that are sort of seen as the top quarterbacks in the draft. And Caleb Williams in particular is one that is being talked about as, this kind of generational talent that comes around every couple of years seemingly, but it is potentially in that category where you do say, it doesn't matter that we already have a quarterback on the roster. This guy is special enough that we need to start thinking about whether we should take him and then figure out the rest down the line, trade away Kyler Murray or whatever that looks like. But that's the conversation I think that they're going to be having at the end of next season is we're in line for one of these guys and how good do we think he is, because that dictates the direction everything goes in.
Yeah, I mean, and general managers, Monti Ossenfort, with the move and getting D-Hop's money off the books beyond this season, it gives him the flexibility to pretty much pivot any direction he wants. I mean, if they wanted to move off Kyler, they could trade him and absorb $46 million plus in dead money if they needed to, and then reset on a rookie contract. It's viewed as good business in the NFL. Let me ask you this. I mean, as we watched the cleanup from Monti Ossenfort, and it was a long one, a lot of unpopular decisions, letting Zach Allen walk, letting Byron Murphy walk, who was on a pretty modest contract. When you look at this roster and how you guys evaluate it over at PFF, where do you think the Arizona Cardinals could improve from 2022 to 2023?
Yeah, and those 2 things, by the way, I mean, those are not coincidences, right? That clearing a lot of this space that they didn't really need to do right now is potentially going to coincide with the flexibility to move away from Kyler Murray's contract if they decide that's the route they want to go. If they're going to do that, it's going to be painful. It's not the easiest deal in the world to get away from. You're going to need to create this kind of space to make that happen. So sort of future-proofing that to at least give you the option of doing it now is smart business. It's good, I think, team management to at least give yourself the capacity to do that by making some of these moves. So that I think is pretty smart. The Cardinals roster, I think, it's in some trouble. They've got some weaknesses in a lot of different areas, and it's actually amazing when you look at it and you think back 12 months, 18 months, what a good position they were in, sort of how quickly the whole thing unraveled, between losing some of the talent that they lost in free agency, guys retiring, and just guys that were expected to work out, not, hitting the level that we expected of them. But I think that defense still needs an awful lot of work up front and on the back end. We're still a little bit TBD in terms of what the linebackers that they drafted in the first round are going to look like. Isaiah Simmons being pivoted more to this sort of defensive back role, which I think is probably where he always belonged, given his college tape at Clemson. And then Zaven Collins, who I still have a lot of faith in, needs to make that step now of showing he can be a real impact player in the middle. And then that offense, the offensive line, I think should be better and is moving in the right direction, but they're probably not going to have a quarterback this year. And the wide receiver core we talked about before might not be able to function without the quarterback's part of it.
Sam, you mentioned the back end of that defense. My last question to you pertains to their all-pro safety, Budda Baker, who has been outspoken that he wants a trade. I think we've heard from people on the inside that he also wants a new contract. He's 28 years old. They've got a team option for 2024. Does it make sense for the Cardinals to let this play out and let Budda Baker walk for a comp pick? Does it make sense to entertain offers now? I don't think, and Bo and I are kind of on the same page here, that we see the new regime outside of an all-pro level season for a bad team, investing money in a soon-to-be 30-year-old safety that's not a key position. What do you make of the Budda Baker situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think they should absolutely be listening to offers. Whether the offers are good enough to make them pull the trigger, is a different matter. And there's probably value to keeping somebody like that around in terms of a guy that can set the standards, a guy that can set a decent culture and will play at a high level for you. There's definitely value in not taking everything off the roster, and doing potentially what Chicago did and really stripping this thing back to absolute bare metal and leaving nothing there. So I think it could go either way. I agree with you guys. I wouldn't invest a ton of money into him with a new contract, but there's probably value in letting him play out this last year, letting him walk, getting the comp pick, and not, tearing the entire thing down. But if the right offer comes along and somebody is willing to give you a decent trade haul for him now, then it's definitely a move they should be listening to.
Great stuff, as always, from our guy over at Pro Football Focus, PFF.com, at PFF_Sam, Sam Monson. Sam, thank you so much, man. We always enjoy talking to you. Best of luck. And, of course, we're going to be tuning in to the PFF NFL podcast as we do on a daily basis. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, guys. Take it easy.
You as well. Sam is done. So are we here at PHNX Cardinals. Johnny Venerable, Bo Brock. Make sure you sign up to become a diehard over at GoPHNX.com. Read the great work of our guy, Howard Balzer, churning out great work. We got OTAs tomorrow back on the practice field with Jonathan Gannon and crew. We'll see who's there for OTAs. It's not mandatory yet. That's next week. But we'll have insight. Of course, you got to follow us on all your socials at PHNX_Cardinals, Instagram, Twitter, for all the news coming out of OTAs. And then we got a new show for you tomorrow night or tomorrow afternoon as well. In the meantime, have a great rest of your Wednesday. For Johnny, I'm Bo. Thanks, producer Sean. We'll talk to you guys soon.